The movie starts with a girl named Sia. She's in her final year of college, and she's really beautiful and attractive. She loves sports so much that she runs every day to keep herself fit and in shape. One day, while she's out running, she gets a call from a big company where she had applied for a job. They told her she's been accepted for an interview, which was scheduled for Wednesday. Suya was super happy because she had been waiting for this chance for a long time. But the problem was that the interview was in Washington, which was really far from her home. After thinking it over, Suya realized she had another problem. The family's annual festival was coming up, and the whole family was going to gather to celebrate. But she decided to go to the interview without telling anyone because she was afraid of how they'd see her if she didn't succeed. The next night, she packed her bag, got into her car, and headed to Washington. While driving, she ran into heavy traffic because of the festival, so she decided to take a shortcut. But when she got on that road, she found it was closed. She tried to use a paper map instead of GPS, which could have taken her through a longer route. After a while, Suya pulled over to the side of the road to take a better look at the map. Suddenly, a car stopped in front of her, and two guys got out. At first, the guys were talking to her normally, but after a bit, their behavior became weird and suspicious. One of them blocked her from getting back into her car. That's when Suya felt the danger and decided to defend herself. She started hitting one of the guys, but the other grabbed her from behind and kept pushing her against the car. At that moment, Suya grabbed a small knife from the guy and stabbed him with it to escape. But the second guy got the knife when she dropped it and stabbed her in the leg. Still, she managed to run away, but her leg was injured, and she began to feel extremely tired. She kept running until she reached an area full of thick trees and bushes all around her. She had no idea where she was, and she was very thirsty and exhausted. When she got to a small stream, she drank from it, but unfortunately, nightfall was approaching, and she needed to find a place to rest. She had no choice but to spend the night in the forest until morning to figure out what to do next. Meanwhile, a local resident called the police to report that a car had been parked on the road for a whole day with no one in it. The police arrived, started investigating, and found out that it was indeed Suya's car. But there were no clues about her except for signs that someone had been dragged from the scene. The officer in charge of the investigation started visiting nearby houses until he reached the house of the two guys who had chased Suya. When he asked them about the car, they denied knowing anything, but the officer noticed blood on one of their shirts. He started suspecting them, but he didn't have enough evidence to make an arrest. At that time, Suya was still in the forest, and her leg was hurting badly. She was also hungry and extremely exhausted. She kept walking slowly until she heard the sound of a car on a mountain. Suddenly, she saw the two guys pushing her car off the mountain to get rid of the evidence. After they left, Suya rushed to her car. She was really upset about what they did, but she held herself together and tried to get her phone. She found it broken, and though it still worked, the battery was really low. Worse, there was no signal in the forest to send a message for help. She tried to send a text to her mom, but her phone died. She started crying, and when she got up to keep moving, she was so tired that she fainted and completely lost consciousness. After she woke up, Suya found herself in a house and noticed that someone had bandaged her injured leg. However, she didn't believe it and was afraid that this person might try to harm her. She kept trying to escape from the house quickly. When she reached the door, suddenly a guy named Lowell entered. Suya started screaming, but Lowell asked her to calm down and assured her he wouldn't hurt her. Yet, she was determined and kept threatening him. She even threw a burning substance at him, making him run outside to use the snow to cool his face. When Suya tried to leave the house, she fainted from exhaustion. When she woke up again, she found herself tied by her hands and feet. Lowell gave her some bread to eat, but all she could think about was why she was there and what had happened to her. However, due to hunger, she started eating and drinking. Lowell began to talk and explain that he was trying to protect her from his cousins, who had been searching for her in the woods. But the big problem was that they were his relatives, and they would come by the house from time to time. Meanwhile, the two brothers were still searching for Suya in the forest, and suddenly they found a piece of her clothing stuck in the trees. Seeing this, they were sure she was still nearby, hiding somewhere. Naturally, they were determined to find her no matter what. Back at the house, Suya and Lowell were talking, and Lowell was trying to calm her down, reassuring her that he wouldn't hurt her. Suddenly, they heard the sound of a car approaching the house. Suya panicked and started screaming, calling for help, hoping someone would hear her and come to rescue her. But Lowell rushed over, covering her mouth with his hand, and told her to calm down. He assured her that he would go check who was outside. Lowell went outside and saw his cousin standing by the car. They asked him where the girl was, but he denied knowing anything about her. The cousins were suspicious and felt something was off, so they decided to enter the house and search for themselves. At that moment, Soya managed to slip out through the back door and hide in an old car that was abandoned outside the house. When the brothers didn't find anything and left, Lowell returned and found Soya hiding. He told her she had made a mistake by leaving the house. Someone could have seen her and taken her. He urged her to quickly come back inside. At that moment, Soya began to realize that Lowell might really be trying to protect her from his cousins. She started to believe that he could actually be a good person. Indeed, Lowell explained that he wanted to help her escape and leave this place, and he knew his cousins were dangerous people involved in illegal activities like drug dealing. Days passed, and the police and investigators in town were trying to solve the case. The officer in charge asked another officer about the latest updates. The officer replied that the girl from the car had been missing for several days and they needed to find her at any cost and figure out what happened in detail to solve the mystery. But the twist was that the officer was corrupt and working with the brothers. He told them they had messed up by letting the girl escape and that the case had become widely known, with the entire police force searching for her. If they got caught, they'd be in big trouble. Meanwhile, Soya was trying to convince Lowell to help her escape and go back to her life. She told him she needed to go to Washington urgently because she had important work there. Lowell replied that he didn't have a car at the moment, but his cousins would be leaving for work at the end of the week. When they left, he could take their car and drive her wherever she needed to go. He asked her to hang in there for just a couple of days. Over the next few days, the relationship between Soya and Lowell began to improve, and Soya started to believe that he didn't want to hurt her, and that he genuinely wanted to help her. Lowell also began opening up to her about himself, telling her that he was a chemistry student and that he loved doing chemistry experiments at home. At that time, the cousins returned to the house again, bringing with them some strange boxes. They set off some smoke inside the house to confuse things even more. In that moment, Soya seized the opportunity and escaped from the house, reaching the riverbank nearby. But the story didn't end there, because at the police station, the honest officer discovered that the corrupt officer was working with the two brothers. The honest officer confronted the corrupt one, pointing a gun at him, and said, "Are you with us or against us?" But the corrupt officer couldn't take it, so he shot the honest officer and killed him. He then hid the body with the help of the two brothers. At that point, the corrupt officer started to feel like the walls were closing in on him, and he was about to be exposed. He went to the brothers and said, "We're in big trouble, and we need to find a way out fast." Meanwhile, Soya and Lowell were sitting outside the house when the corrupt officer's car passed by. He suspected that Soya was hiding with Lowell, so he stopped his car, got out, and said, "I want to search the house right now." But Lowell responded, "You don't have a search warrant, and I'm not letting you in or search the house." The corrupt officer didn't back down, and went to the brothers, telling them he was sure the girl was hiding with Lowell. So, the brothers decided to head to the house and search for themselves. When they entered the house, they found Soya and caught both her and Lowell, holding them at gunpoint. Lowell tried to calm them down, saying, "You don't understand. The girl is here because I'm planning something big." But Soya knew she couldn't stay locked up or on the run forever, so she decided to take things seriously and fight for her life. She began thinking of her final escape plan, even if it meant facing the brothers and the corrupt officer in one last showdown. At that point, the story took a completely different turn. Soya and Lowell started planning together how to confront the brothers and the corrupt officer. Soya realized that she had to take a bold step and start the confrontation to escape and reclaim her life. The end was near, and Soya knew she had to be strong and take a stand to save herself and face the evil surrounding her with courage and determination. Soya was helping Lowell with his work, and at that time, Lowell asked her to make some coffee. She went into the kitchen and placed the coffee cup in the oven instead of on the stove. After a while, the oven made a sound indicating the coffee was ready. The younger brother approached the oven, and suddenly, there was a massive explosion. The explosion was so strong that it set the house on fire, and the younger brother died instantly. It turned out that Lowell knew this was going to happen, as he had been working on a dangerous chemical substance, and had told Soya to use it at the right moment, which she did. After that, we see Soya and Lowell manage to escape the house during the explosion. Lowell was injured, but Soya was unharmed. Suddenly, the older brother emerged from the house, his entire body burned. Lowell told Soya to run as the brother tried to shoot her. Lowell grabbed the brother from behind and tried to take the gun from him. A brutal fight broke out between them. After Lowell took the gun, the brother started begging, saying, "Don't do this," and asked him, "Are you doing all this for a girl?" After Lowell got the information about the girl's location in the car, he killed the brother quickly to erase all the evidence. Soya tried to escape and made it to the road. At that moment, a police car was passing by, and the corrupt officer picked her up. While driving, the officer asked her about Lowell, and she told him that Lowell was protecting her from his cousins. The officer then stopped the car and said, "The only thing we can do is keep walking. When they reached the river, Soya asked him, "What are we doing here?" But he ignored her question and told her to get into the river. Once she got in, Soya tried to run, but the officer grabbed her and dragged her into the water, trying to drown her and finish her off. But we know that Loyal had given Soya a small screwdriver and told her to keep it for emergencies. The problem was that the screwdriver fell into the water, but our heroine, Soya, managed to grab it again. She attacked the officer with it, stabbing him repeatedly and fiercely until she injured him. Afterwards, Soya emerged from the river, walking along the main road. She saw police cars approaching her. The police were coming to investigate the many crimes that had taken place in the area, including the disappearance of the officer, which was connected to Soya and her missing car, along with all the other details. When the police arrived, they found that Soya had been saved at the last moment, and that the corrupt officer had tried to cover up all the crimes he had committed. In the end, the police decided to arrest the officer and investigate him, as all the evidence pointed to his involvement in these crimes. And thus, our story concludes after all the thrilling events that unfolded, showing how our film's heroine, Soya, managed to survive in the end and uncover all the crimes and corruption surrounding her. That's how today's movie ends. I hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to like and subscribe.